you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today I remember a city builder, a great Canadian, and for me, a dear friend. Known as one of the three Morrison sisters, the eldest of Gay Cook and Greet Hale, Jean Piggott was a businesswoman who turned around her father's company, Morrison Lamoth, well before women were in the boardrooms in this nation. She ran 2 royal tours and one for the Pope. She was the Director of Appointments for Prime Minister Joe Clark, and she was named the Chair of the National Capital Commission by Prime Minister Mulroney. And as someone who moved to Ottawa later in my life, I appreciated Jean's contribution because she believed and she instilled in all of us that Ottawa is every Canadian's second hometown. But perhaps, Mr. Speaker, what brought Jean and I closest together is a very rare bond in Ottawa politics. We are the only 2 women to ever have been elected to the Ontario and federal Progressive Conservatives in our city. Jean was elected in 1976 in a by-election for Ottawa-Carleton, which is now the riding of Ottawa Centre Mr. Nakfi represents. It took 30 years almost to the date before another Progressive Conservative female was elected in the City of Ottawa. That time it was me in a by-election to represent Nepean Carleton in this place. Jean was everything that I'd ever asked for in a mentor. She was a great friend, a dear supporter. And when it became known that I wasn't the favoured choice of my particular political party in Toronto, Jean Piggott and a number of other women, Walter Baker's daughter Nancy, and Georgie Tupper, the wife of Bill Tupper, the former MP for my riding, stood behind me, among another group of women who really wanted to see another Conservative elected. I first met Jean in 1999 when I was a young Conservative staffer. Her and her sisters, on Sir John A. Macdonald's birthday, came to Parliament Hill, had a birthday party for Sir John A. And many years later, she would endorse me, which was something, Mr. Speaker, I was in awe of for many years. Her grace, her wisdom, and her wonderful character were something that has instilled a great deal of pride, both in myself and among many other people in the City of Ottawa. She created a great relationship with my husband, who she would call from time to time when he was working in the Senate to share great stories and gossip with. And of course, my daughter, Victoria, benefited from great stories I could tell about Jean's Ottawa, along with many of the other city builders. But, Mr. Speaker, today I am in tribute of Jean Piggott and the great things that she did for the City of Ottawa and our nation. And I just want to say also that she wasn't just a role model for me or other members of the Progressive Conservative Party. She was a role model for city councillors like Jan Harder and Maria McRae, as well as to journalists in the City of Ottawa like Susan Schering. So today, I just want to, on behalf of the women of Ontario and the women of this legislature and the people of Ottawa, say thank you to Jean Piggott for her great contributions to our nation and to our city. Rest in peace, Jean.
Thank you.
The name Helene Campbell has become synonymous with organ donation awareness. After a health setback last year, a double lung transplant for Helene was necessary. As she waited for a donor, with each breath becoming more difficult, Helene found her voice. And what an inspirational voice it's become. Captivating our nation's capital, Helene, with failing health, rallied Ottawa. Her organ donation campaign hit the Ottawa Citizen, then soon became a clarion call by radio host Mahler of Hot 89.9. Soon, Helene mobilized Justin Bieber and Ellen DeGeneres. I know what you're all going to say, no big deal, right? Never once throughout Helene's ordeal did she ever ask, why me? Instead, she's handled herself with grace and dignity, putting her cause before her own fears. She simply asked, how can I help? And she did. The Trillium Gift of Life Network attributes Helene's campaign to a 2% increase in organ donation registration, growing by 8,000 people alone in Ottawa, creating what's been dubbed the Helene Campbell effect. Nepean Carleton residents are particularly proud of our hometown hero, and for her steadfast contribution to organ donation awareness, I nominated Helene for a Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Last week, she was presented with this honour by the Prime Minister himself. Later today, I'll take her to meet Ontario's Premier. And just moments ago, she met with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's loyal opposition leader. But above all, Speaker, I can say this. Helene has had that double lung transplant. And unlike the day that she first joined me at Queen's Park in January, lugging 2 very large oxygen tanks just mere months ago, she's here today, breathing on her own. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in supporting Be a Donor.
But I just ask you, like, name that other one woman and why. Like, who was she that helped you and really you know, reminded you who you are? I can tell you mine. It was my mother, Virginia, and my dad's sister, Ina, are best friends. They've been best friends for over 50 years. And even though my father has passed for the past 13 years, Ina comes and visits my mother every single day. They're in Nova Scotia and they have coffee. They have coffee every day from 1 until 3. And they are, I remember my Aunt Ina running for, my dad was elected for 30 years in Nova Scotia, but my aunt ran for school board. And I remember in the 80s, and I remember my mom and my aunt wearing these like trench coats and these fancy hats. I guess they might've been in style at the time. And I always thought how stylish they were, but how smart they were. And so we actually call my mom and my aunt Grace and Frankie, because that's, you know, from that Netflix series. They're very much that, except for the Nova Scotia version of it. And so they were there for me. And then when I got elected, I changed the legislative sitting hours, and I've always been dedicated to trying to get more women involved in politics, because I always felt that, for me anyway, that the, you know, there's trailblazers and there's people that come before us, but then as women who follow in their footsteps, it's maybe not our job to go even further. It sure is, but maybe sometimes it's to widen that trail so more women can walk with us.